A story about the census from 1900. Joe, tell me what we're looking at here, what you know about 1900 in Edgerton.
Well, this tells you about the all the people that lived up in Edgerton, and of course we have some of the petitions where they were born. Am I right, Dave? And I don't know. This census tells us about there were about 200 to 300 families up there in Edgerton.
And were they mainly associated with the mines?
Strictly. Mining. Just mining. And
was this the last census involving Edgerton?
It was. June the 4th.
And after this, Edgerton disappeared.
In 1905.
That's good. Okay. This is take 3 on the stone house. Joe, tell us about this picture.
This is the Schifonius Schust stone house. It remained until the year 1924, but was in existence during the coal mining era in Edgerton. And at one time they sold some beer and shoes, but never any groceries.
This was sort of Edgerton's department store?
No, it was just family-owned. They call it a hotel.
Is there anything at all remaining of this these days?
No. It's gone probably since the 1940s, early 50s. Part of it remained until that time.
Excellent. Okay, which one do I do now? This is the stone pillar. Joe, what are we seeing in this photo?
Well, this is the main pillar of the breaker. The breaker consisted of about 7 to 8 tiers high up into the mountainside. So that is the real foundation for the beginning of the breaker and the opening. And right above it, it had railroad track lines running on a trestle on the top and the bottom, where they would load the coal, the cars of coal on top, and the empty ones would be on the bottom.
So the coal that was mined in Edgerton was actually processed in this breaker and then hauled away by railroad.
It went on through the D&H Railroad, and when they had problems with the coal, they used to take care of it up at the Powderly Breaker in Carbondale. And then went on to the main line of D&H and on to Market.
Okay.
That's part of it, of the canal as well. The railroad running from Edgerton Railroad into the main line.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is a little too glossy and things. Let's let that one go. Any idea what that picture?
Yeah, the breaker began in 1883 and kind of completed in 1905.
Okay, so that picture's around 1905?
22 years they've been up in there.
But I mean the picture, is that from?
I'd have to guess in 1890s.
Yeah, 1890s.
1890s? All right, and let me do this part. 3, 2, 1. This is the only known picture of the town of Edgerton. On the far right you can see the schoolhouse. Toward the center in the back is the breaker, the lifeblood of what was the Edgerton community. And of course the houses all around the small town, most of those I'm sure company homes. And this is take 1 on the picture of the teacher, and coming up in 3, 2, 1. Dale, this I'm told is one of the teachers?
He was the last teacher that taught up there. It was John Moran. He lived on Laurel Street in Archibald, and he walked every day from Archibald through the woods up to Edgerton. The distance is about 4 miles each way. And he started the fire. I guess the classes started around 8 o'clock, so he had to start early in the morning. He taught till 4:30 and then walked home again. Put the fire out and then walked home.
And walked some 4 miles to teach school.
Each way, yes.
Dedication.
Very much.
This will be after we've done the story of the little boy, his death, and this is going to be a shot of the stone and the explanation about this. Dale will tell us about that in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, this is the final resting place of little John Luxmore. You can see on the bottom of the stone there, 1887 to 1894. He's buried there with his parents. He's the little boy that we found by accident in the newspaper microfilm that drowned up there. And he was originally buried in the cemetery over near where the projects lie in German, but that was dug up probably in the 1940s for coal, and everyone was reinterred in the German cemetery, and that's where this stone is, and that's where his remains lie right now.
So some of those people who died in Edgerton and were buried there, they lived there because of coal. In a sense, they died around the coal industry, but in another sense, Dale, the coal industry affected them after their death.
That is correct, yes. Because they moved everyone from that cemetery about a half a mile away to the German cemetery where they all lie now.
And the reason for the move again was?
Coal companies wanted to mine the coal underneath the cemetery, so they paid to remove all the bottles.
Mining.
And they stripped it, yeah.
Strip mining, the coal was more valuable in essence than the cemetery.
So they,
Apparently so.
This will be explanation as to how Edgerton, in essence, came into being. So, 3, 2, 1. Well, Dale, obviously, Edgerton was a coal town, but how did it all get started?
Well, it actually started by the man named John Hosey. He came over here. He was a breed of person that doesn't exist anymore. He came over at 12 years old from Scotland, and he wanted to break free from his parents, and he wanted to be independent. And they didn't want him to go, so they said, well, we'll send you, we'll let you go if you go with your older brother. Well, he came over here, and he first started working in the New York City area on the rocks and the quarries and stuff. And he came here, and he got into the coal business. He discovered coal up there probably in the 1850s, and him and his sons ran it. But he did die in 1881, 2 years before the town started. So he actually never did see Edgerton, but it was because of all his work up there that the town began. When he died, he had holdings in coal companies as far away down as Nanticoke and below. And I think the state of Virginia even owed him money. He did some work down there for them. So he's a very entrepreneurial type of guy.
yes, and
Now we're going to talk now about the Edgerton town band.
as a bugle corps.
Oh, okay. 3, 2, 1. Although Edgerton was a small community, it was thriving in a lot of ways, including Dale entertainment. Who are these folks?
Well, there was a man named Anton Vrabel who lived up there, and he started what was called the Edgerton Drum Corps. And these young boys belonged to it. We don't have any names on them, but the pictures belong to a guy down in Washington, D.C., who sent us copies to put in the book. But that was taken in front of the company store, and all that's left now is a little foundation up there. And they posed. And you can see in the window, the reflection there, there was homes on the opposite side of the street. You can see a picket fence on the left side of the picture there. You could also see some people, probably the coal company owners, in the window on the right. And they're young boys, probably 10, 12 years old, maybe younger. The picture on the right, they look like they're a little older. We're not sure if that is the drum corps or not. It's the same company store, but they're young boys on the left and a little bit older ones on the right. And the one on the right, on the far right, you can see a wagon there if you look really close, and it says Simpson and Watkins Company. They're the ones who bought the town from the Hosey brothers after their father passed. They sold out in 1883, the Simpson and Watkins. That's when they opened up the mine, and they thought the coal would last forever because the name Edgerton we think it means blessed town, and the coal vein went as high as 20 feet in some spots.
It's an Anglo-Saxon word meaning blessed town.
Mm-hmm.
Krenitsky, right? Krenitsky, okay. Well, you don't make an R properly, it doesn't look right. Now, this is a second. Keep talking to each other, and don't forget, point around things. We're introducing the two guests. 3, 2, 1. If you want to find out about the town of Edgerton, you probably ought to talk with one of these gentlemen, Joe Krenitsky and Dale Keklock. They were involved in a project in writing a book about the community of Edgerton. They're overlooking a spot right now that was a key spot in that community. Could do a third take on that just in case. 3, 2, 1. And we're reintroducing our guests for the program at this point in 3, 2, 1. If you want to know more about Edgerton, you probably ought to talk with one of these gentlemen, Joe Krenitsky or Dale Keklock. They wrote a book about the town of Edgerton, and they're standing in a spot that was key to that community. loud, okay?
Okay.
I may ask you the same things twice, forgive me, but that's just to make sure it's good. Okay, now we're going to talk first about the hotel, I believe. Joe, the spot behind us was very important in town. Why was this such an important spot?
Well, the folks from East German would come up the Edgerton Road past where Aylesworth Park is right now, and they'd come up and visit, and this was the only property here. So they were people that came, they immigrated from the Eastern Europe, and I do have a picture of the castle garden where they first lived, wasn't it? And then they got a job up here, and they come here and had a beer or two, if I can say that. And they enjoyed themselves on Sunday afternoons. Right over to my left, they had an orchard, and over to the right is where he had his barns and his horses and chickens and all the animals. And to my left over down there, they also had a dirt cellar, which they took the ice from the creek and deposited in the cellar, and they covered over with bark and leaves and probably some evergreen branches, and preserved the foods for the summer.
There was a hotel here. Tell me about that hotel.
It belonged to Strophonius Schust. He's buried now at the St. Michael Cemetery just before you come to Aylesworth Park, and he didn't work up in Edgerton, not that I know of, but he ran this little hotel here, and I have spoken to his sons, and on Sunday afternoons his 3 sons would come down and speak to me about what happened here at Edgerton, and told me all about the stories, and I just jotted everything down, and we have pictures and so on.
Okay, we'll stop that now.
Same button?
And, yeah, I'm going close on Joe again. Okay, we're doing more on the hotel at this point. Joe, how important was a hotel to a little town like this?
Well, it was very important because when they worked up at the mines, and there are several saloons up there, but they came down here because they knew the folks more than they would know the people working up at the mines.
So was this a community gathering spot?
Gathering, right.
And what happened to that hotel eventually?
Well, when the Edgerton closed down in 1905, they remained here until the early 20s, and I guess they just tore it down, and that was the end of it.
Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing with you, Dale. And we're going to talk about the fire, okay? Except I'm going to move over this time because...
This didn't shut off, does it matter?
Hit the button again.
Now we're going to have Joe tell us why this was an important area here. 3, 2, 1. Joe, what were we looking at now? What's this all about?
Well, we're looking here on the side of the pay shack is right over to my left, and the company storehouse, company office was over on that end, and over here to my left over also was the mule barn, and there was the superintendent's office here, and the mine boss offices and foreman, and the pay shack. And when they paid in silver dollars. They received silver dollars. It was they wouldn't accept, they called that wallpaper money. They didn't want that. They wanted the silver dollars, and that's what they were paid with.
Excellent explanation about the young boy dying. It comes right after my stand-up that I just did, and Joe's going to tell us. So, Joe, tell us what happened right basically at this spot, when it happened, how it happened.
Well, on March the 7th, 1894, there was waters were very high in this area because of the spring runoff from the mountainside of the snows and so forth and so on, and the creek grew real high up at this point. And right right in behind me was the Luxmore home, and Mrs. Luxmore, she was baking bread in the backyard, several feet from where the entrance were to the home, and they had a son by the name of John who was 5 years old, and a little daughter by the name of Viola. By her name, she was 3 years old. And while the mother was baking bread, the little boys and the little boy and girl were playing around for a while, and all of a sudden, John ran from where mother was baking bread, and he ran to this point here. However, his sister saw John run down. She told her mother to come down here because Johnny's down here by the creek. And as John was down here throwing skipping stones, and she told him, John, come back. But he slipped into the creek right over in through here. And as she walked by here, she had her apron. It was a white apron, of course. And she wiped her tears from her eyes because she saw John fall in there. And directly to my left was the mule barn. The mule barn saw this happen, so he walked over and said, what happened, Mrs. Luxmore? She said, my little Johnny fell into the creek. So what he did, he got a group of his fellow workers, and they went down to the left side of the creek, and they went down to the bridge to try to see if they could find him down there. And little Viola and the mother went on the left side, down right-hand side, and they found him 500 feet down into the brush.
He had perished. Okay, now that's...
He had classes here from Monday until Saturday morning for half days too.
You tell me that. Hold on 1 second now. Okay.
All right.
We'll ask Joe now about the classes. Joe, what about the classes that they had here?
Well, the classes they had here, they began at 8 o'clock in the morning. They had a class from 8 till noon, and then from noon to 4 o'clock. And it was mainly, as Dale said, the young girls. And during that time, they would come here and they'd play out into the back field, which was widely open. And the deer used to run through here, so forth and so on. And the teacher would come here, and the desk was up on that end, and the pupils were over on this end before you came into the schoolhouse. And then on Sunday evenings, they had a person by the name of Thomas Caffrey, I believe. He had the Sunday school classes here on Sunday evening from 7 to 9.
Good, excellent.
Well, Dale, it's nice to see you. We appreciate you bringing us back.
Yeah, take it easy, buddy. We'll take care of your car for you.
someday. And
Yeah, I might be spending the night here. Well, we're gonna.
well, you got a foundation. That's...
No, I have to go backwards, I think, with this leg.
See, you know, when I was on my route, people used to tell me about...
Thank you, sir. This is a retake on the story of the... No coal left.
No coal.
Great.
Excellent.
What a production. Just like Warner Brothers.
Excellent. I'm walking around thinking you know a lot about it. I mean, you're in the film. Now, you've seen Jurassic Park where they put dinosaurs in. Other than unless you know Spielberg, would we need to walk down here and put the buildings in digitally? Can that be done? Spielberg could, because
Well,
they
we
put
have
dinosaurs
somebody
in
to
it.
do that, don't we?
How?
They can put the buildings in.
Oh, I know. I know what they could
If
do.
you have a really good editing thing, you could take your picture and you could superimpose it
Right, that's exactly.
over. Yeah, I can't do that.
I can't
I
either.
might be able to with my program, but I don't know my editing program as good as I should have.
This is part of all that stuff too.
What I want now is I want to put together some kind of a general close to the thing.
Did you want to see the store, the company store? It's on the other side.
Oh, is the foundation still there for
Yes, the foundation is still
And
there.
we might as well take them up to them and they'll complete it.
Yeah,
Do you have time yet?
Let's see, is it ready yet?
What time is it? 2:48.
About quarter of. Maybe the foundation of the store may be as much as I can.
It's only right over the road.
That may be about as much as I can get right now. And hopefully, if we get that music thing to me, see, the music's going to fill in a lot too. Because I'm sure a song's going to go 3
Well,
minutes.
we can give them all.
Well, that's what I'm going. He's going to pick out what sounds the best.
Yeah.
And I could just put them on DVD. I didn't get them on. I got to
Yeah,
Get him on
we
there
tried to
tonight.
dub over his clip onto my computer, but everything was coming out as stills rather than video. So if he dubs it onto a DVD, I can use that definitely. I can really hear that breaker running because everything was open.
Yeah.
And the kids run around here, yep.
In the back.
They're all dead and buried. Probably in my cemetery database.
Well, it's a good thing you're the main crossroads here anyway for an easy turnaround. I see, I did put my tripod back in the back. Right?
What happened to her springs on that? Why they don't work anymore? Thank you. Yeah, the company store is right where the picture was taken with those kids. That's where we're headed right now.
Of the dam and the coffer dam, but you can get them off the boards.
Oh, I think we're good, Joe. I'm happy with what we have because we have the drama of it, you know.
Okay.
And in TV sense, that's what. Okay. How are you? Am I out of your way?
Nope. You guys are good. You two are good.
But I'm.
Now you're good.
Okay. Maybe you can zoom in
Perfect.
on them slightly.
You know to zoom in on the top? There's a little button that slide. You pull
Wide
over towards
angle.
you.
Or...
I want your whole body. I would rather your whole bodies and their feet to head.
Good.
I think that
no,
looks.
you don't want to feet
No?
to head. No.
No. Okay. I want just their.
Okay, you're better
You see
knees
where the
up
zoom
or
is on
even
top?
waist up.
That little button there?
Screw the zoom. I'll move
Yeah,
forward.
you're better knees up or even waist up. Of course, one of the reasons for that is because I used to come in a suit, but I'd wind up in a place like this, so I wore big boots. It didn't look well together, but I was safe, and they didn't show it
Okay.
on camera.
Best way to do it.
Wrap.
I'm so glad he came up with it.
Yes.
What
Oh, very good. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
It's just so great because we've been able to do a little bit more in a little less time
Right.
because of that.
Let me ask, is it what you expected? Now that doctor's wife thought there'd be homes up here, did you expect more or less?
No, I expect to see this kind of thing, the stone
Yeah.
foundations and such, yeah.
Yeah, it's
You know what? The imagination takes you a little further.
that's
Everybody
right.
thinks there's a town
Yeah,
under
yeah,
Lake
yeah.
Wallenpaupack. I guarantee you there's not very much
No,
sitting
not
under
left,
there.
no, not
There
now.
may possibly be remains of a building or so, but
Right.
That's it, yeah. Wilsonville, I think it was.
yeah.
But I drove right down this street here and I told my sister, we're somewhere near this town. See, I didn't know Pepperden back in
Yeah,
1982.
you didn't know you were here.
I was right on 8th
So
Street.
your assignment then is to get me a DVD
Yes,
copy of this and a DVD
And the songs,
of the
yes,
song.
all of that.
Industry and the attractions that make our area unique. Our history is important too, and today's program is all about the history of a town in Lackawanna County that no longer exists. It is the ghost town of Edgerton. Now let her go. I'm going to do a second to make sure.
I thought the red minute wasn't running.
No, no, it is.
3, 2, 1. Hello, I'm David DeCosmo, and this is People, Places, and Things. We've been traveling throughout the region to bring you stories of the... I don't like stories. 3, 3, 3. 3, 2, 1. Hello, I'm David DeCosmo. This is People, Places, and Things. We've been traveling throughout the region to introduce you to the individuals, the institutions, the industry, and the attractions that make our area unique. Our history is important too, and today's program is all about the history of a Lackawanna County town that no longer exists. It is the ghost town of Edgerton.
beautiful.
Okay.
Beautiful.
I thought you said if the red thing was on it,